It was a quiet Saturday afternoon. Tessa stood in her bedroom, helping her best friend Ava get ready for a date. The room smelled of perfume and hairspray. Ava spun in front of the mirror, her smile wide and bright. She was wearing Tessa's favorite black silk dress, the one her husband Liam had given her for their 3rd wedding anniversary. Tessa smiled softly. "That dress always brings luck. You'll look stunning." Ava laughed, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I need all the luck I can get with this guy." They giggled like they always did. There was nothing strange about this moment, just two friends, sharing an afternoon. Ava grabbed her purse, blew Tessa a kiss, and rushed out the door. The faint smell of her perfume stayed in the room long after she left. As the evening came, Liam walked into the room adjusting his tie. "I have an urgent business dinner," he said, not meeting her eyes. Tessa nodded. "So suddenly?" He kissed her forehead quickly. "Yeah, can't miss it." And then he was gone. The house felt too quiet. The dinner she had made sat on the table untouched. Hours passed. The clock ticked louder with every minute. Tessa sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone to distract herself. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Grace, her friend from work. "Saw someone who looked just like Ava at the Grandview Hotel. That dress of yours is iconic." Tessa froze. Her heart thudded in her chest. The Grandview Hotel? That was where Liam often went for client meetings. Her hand trembled as she held the phone. The black silk dress. The hotel. The business dinner. The pieces started to fit together in a way that made her chest ache. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. She just sat there, still staring into space. Her voice, soft but full of pain, echoed in her head. "That night, I realized the universe doesn't whisper. It screams. You just have to be brave enough to listen." Tessa and Ava had been friends for 10 years. They met at university. Two very different girls who somehow completed each other. Tessa was calm, thoughtful, and careful with her choices. Ava was bold, loud, and always chasing excitement. Still, they became like sisters. When Ava struggled with heartbreak or money problems, Tessa was always there. She shared her food, her clothes, even her small apartment at times. Ava often said, "You're the sister I never had," and Tessa believed it. Years later, when Tessa married Liam, Ava stood beside her as the maid of honor. During the reception, Ava raised her glass and joked, "If I can't find a man like Liam, I'll just borrow yours someday." Everyone laughed, including Tessa. It was just a funny line back then, a harmless moment. After that, Ava became part of Tessa and Liam's life. She visited their home often, joined them for dinners, birthdays, and holidays. Sometimes, when Tessa worked late, Ava would drop by to keep Liam company. Tessa trusted her completely. There was never a reason not to. But over the years, things changed. Liam stopped being the same man she married. He was always busy, always tired. His phone was constantly in his hand. He'd cancel date nights or come home grumpy after work. When Tessa tried to talk, he'd snap. "Not now, Tess. I've had a long day." The laughter that used to fill their home slowly disappeared. At work, Tessa's friend Grace noticed the change. One afternoon, over lunch, Grace sighed and said, "Girl, you're holding your marriage together with hope and duct tape." Tessa smiled weakly. "It's just a rough patch. He's stressed from work." Grace raised an eyebrow. "Rough patch or full storm?" Tessa laughed it off, pretending everything was fine. Deep down, she still believed that love could be fixed, that with enough patience and care, things would go back to how they used to be. But the night Ava borrowed her black silk dress, everything started to look different. Tessa began remembering small details she had ignored, like the way Liam smiled a little too warmly at Ava's jokes, or how Ava would touch his arm when she laughed. At the time, it seemed friendly, innocent. Now those same moments played back in her mind like warnings she never noticed. She remembered a dinner party a few months earlier. Liam had complimented Ava on her new hairstyle, saying, "That color really suits you." He hadn't noticed when Tessa had changed hers the week before. Ava had smiled and said, "Thanks, Liam. You always notice." They had shared a look then, one Tessa had brushed off as friendly. But now, thinking back, every glance, every smile between them burned her heart with new meaning. She remembered another time when she came home early from work and found Ava sitting on the couch, laughing with Liam. They had jumped a little when they saw her, like two kids caught doing something wrong. But Ava had smiled quickly and said, We were just talking about your birthday surprise. Tessa had believed her. She had wanted to believe her. Looking back now, she realized how blind love can make a person. Tessa sat alone one evening, holding a photo of the three of them, her, Liam and Ava, smiling at a beach picnic. She traced the edges of the picture with her finger, her heart heavy. She thought she had the perfect friendship and the perfect marriage. But sometimes, what looks perfect on the outside hides quiet cracks no one wants to see. As she placed the photo back on the shelf, a thought crossed her mind, one that made her chest ache. Maybe the cracks had been there all along. She had just been too loyal, too loving, to see them point. 2 days later, Tessa went to the dry cleaner after work. The place smelled of starch and detergent, the soft hum of machines filling the air. She handed over her ticket and waited as the worker disappeared behind the counter. When he returned, he carried a familiar sight, a black silk dress shining softly under the light. Her black silk dress. The one Ava had borrowed 2 nights ago. Tessa frowned. "Are you sure this one's mine?" she asked. The man looked at the tag and replied, "It says Ava Collins." Her heart stopped. Ava Collins, her best friend. The name stared back at her like a wound written in ink. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. Everything around her faded. The sound of hangers clinking, people chatting, the hum of the machines. All she could see was the dress, hanging there between strangers' clothes, carrying the scent of betrayal. She took it anyway, her hands shaking slightly as she folded it carefully into the bag. When she reached home, she walked straight to her bedroom and hung the dress back in her closet. She stood there, staring at it as if it were alive, as if it could speak and confess everything she was afraid to know. The smooth silk looked innocent, but to her it felt heavy with secrets. That evening Liam came home late. The sound of his keys jingled at the door, followed by the faint smell of his cologne, but mixed with something else. A scent she didn't wear. Chanel número 5. Ava's perfume. Tessa stayed calm, sitting at the dining table. "Was your meeting productive?" she asked softly. Liam loosened his tie, not meeting her eyes. "Yeah." "Why?" She looked at him for a moment. "You smell like Chanel number 5. He froze for a second, then forced a small laugh. "You're imagining things again, Tess." She didn't answer. She just nodded and turned back to her plate, pretending to eat. But inside, her chest felt tight, her stomach heavy. Her silence said everything she couldn't bring herself to say out loud. That night, after Liam fell asleep, Tessa sat quietly in the living room with her phone. Her hands trembled as she opened the GPS tracker connected to Liam's car. She scrolled through the locations. Grandview Hotel. Twice, that week. Her worst fear was no longer a suspicion. It was real. She stared at the screen, her eyes burning. A part of her wanted to scream, to throw the phone, to wake him up and demand the truth. But another part, the tired, broken part, just sat there in silence. Finally, she took a deep breath and called Ava. "Hey," Tessa said, trying to sound normal. "How was your date? You never told me who he was." There was a pause on the other end. Ava's voice came out soft, uncertain. "It's complicated. I'll tell you soon." Tessa closed her eyes. She didn't need to hear anything else. The hesitation, the nervous tone. It was enough. Ava was lying. When she ended the call, she sat in the dark for a long time, the phone still in her hand. Her thoughts were loud, but her heart was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after something inside you breaks. Her voice echoed softly in her mind, like a whisper only she could hear. Some betrayals don't need evidence. They live in the way someone says your name, carefully avoiding guilt. Tessa glanced toward the bedroom, where Liam slept peacefully, unaware that the truth was already unraveling. She looked back at the closet, at the black silk dress, and knew that nothing would ever be the same again. Tessa became consumed with finding the truth. Every smile from Liam, every message from Ava, every late-night call. She began to notice everything. She didn't confront them, not yet. Instead, she watched, listened, and waited. Her mornings felt heavier, her nights longer. She moved through her days quietly, pretending everything was normal while her heart carried a storm. At work, Grace noticed the change in her. One afternoon, as they sat in the break room, Grace said softly, "You're shrinking, Tess. Stop making yourself small for people who betray you." Tessa forced a small smile. "I'm fine," she lied. Grace gave her a knowing look. "You don't have to be fine all the time." But Tessa didn't respond. She just nodded and changed the topic. She wasn't ready to talk. Not yet. She needed proof. Days turned into weeks. Liam's lies grew bolder, and Ava's visits became less frequent. But still Tessa noticed things. Liam's phone would light up at midnight, and he would leave the room to answer. Sometimes he'd return with a smile he couldn't hide. One evening, Tessa was lying in bed pretending to sleep. The room was dark except for the glow of Liam's phone screen. She heard him whisper, his voice low but clear. "I'll see you at the hotel tomorrow. Don't forget the dress. I love you in it." Her heart stopped. Her breath caught in her throat. The black dress. Her dress. Her hands trembled under the blanket. She turned slightly, careful not to make a sound. He hung up and slipped into bed beside her, completely unaware that she had heard every word. When his breathing turned steady, she sat up quietly and grabbed her phone. Her fingers shook as she opened the voice recorder and replayed what she had captured. His words echoed again and again. "I love you" in it. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't cry out. She bit her lip until it hurt, holding the pain inside. The next morning, she stood by the mirror, looking at her reflection. The woman staring back didn't look like her anymore. Her eyes looked tired, her smile gone. Still, she dressed neatly, put on light makeup, and walked out as if it were just another day. But this day she followed him. Her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as she drove behind his car. Her heart pounded so loudly she could almost hear it. She kept her distance, careful not to be seen. He stopped at the Grandview Hotel, the same place Grace had mentioned. Tessa parked a few cars away waiting. She felt her stomach twist as she saw him step out of the car. He looked relaxed, even happy. Minutes later, a taxi stopped in front of the hotel. The door opened and Ava stepped out. Tessa's breath caught. Ava was wearing the black silk dress. Her black silk dress. Tessa's hands shook as she watched from her car. Liam smiled when he saw Ava. He walked toward her, placed his hand on her back, and leaned in to kiss her. That was it. The truth she had been running from was right there in front of her. In the middle of the hotel lobby. The world around her went silent. The sound of the cars, people, everything, it all disappeared. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, frozen, as her world quietly collapsed. After a few seconds, she started her car and drove away. Her vision was blurry with tears she refused to let fall. Her body felt numb, but her mind was sharp. She finally had her answer. Painful, cruel, and real. When she reached home, she sat on the couch and stared at the wall. Hours passed, but she didn't move. She thought about every moment, every lie, every memory that now felt poisoned. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ava. "Hey, how are you? Haven't seen you in a while." Tessa stared at it for a long time. No words came. She turned off her phone and placed it on the table. Her voice played softly in her head, calm but broken. "When your heart breaks, you don't scream. You become the silence that scares them." And in that silence, Tessa made a promise to herself, not to destroy them, but to rebuild herself stronger than ever before. Weeks passed quietly after the night Tessa saw them at the hotel. She didn't confront Liam. She didn't cry or shout. She just went to a lawyer and filed for a legal separation. When Liam received the papers, he was shocked. "What is this, Tessa? You're overreacting." Tessa looked at him calmly. "I'm not. I just need peace." He frowned, confused. "Is there someone else? What happened to you?" She didn't answer. She didn't owe him any explanation anymore. From that day, Tessa stopped trying to fix the marriage. She focused on herself, going to work, spending time with Grace, and slowly learning to live alone. Every night still hurt, but she found small ways to heal. Long walks, soft music, quiet mornings with coffee. Ava, on the other hand, kept calling. Her messages were cheerful, pretending nothing had changed. "Hey girl. Haven't seen you in so long. We should hang out." Tessa read the messages but never replied. Then one evening, she made a decision. She invited both Liam and Ava to her home for dinner. The message was simple. "Let's meet. I need closure." When they arrived, the air felt thick. Liam sat stiffly on one side of the table, while Ava fidgeted with her hands, pretending to smile. Dinner started quietly. Tessa served them food and spoke politely, her voice calm and even. They talked about random things, work, weather, life, avoiding the real reason they were there. After a few minutes, Tessa stood up and brought an envelope to the table. She placed it gently in front of them. You both said you're honest people, she said softly. Let's test that. Liam frowned. What's that supposed to mean? Without answering, Tessa took out her phone, opened a recording, and pressed play. The room filled with Liam's voice, low and clear. I'll see you at the hotel tomorrow. Don't forget the dress, I love you in it. Then came Ava's soft laughter. Silence. The kind that burns. Liam's face went pale. Ava's eyes filled with tears. Tessa. It's not what it sounds like, Liam stammered. Tessa looked at him, her voice steady. You said that dress was for me. Turns out it fit betrayal better. Ava began to cry. Tess, please. I didn't mean to. Tessa raised her hand gently to stop her. Don't. You meant every moment of it. Liam reached for her hand, but she pulled away. Tessa, I made a mistake. Please, we can fix this. She looked at him, her eyes tired but calm. No, Liam. You broke something that can't be fixed, my trust. The room stayed silent. You could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Finally, Tessa stood up. She looked at both of them. Two people she once loved deeply, now strangers sitting at her table. You both deserve each other, she said quietly. But you don't deserve my peace. With that, she walked away from the table, her steps slow but firm. Liam called after her, his voice cracking. Ava sobbed, hiding her face in her hands. Tessa didn't turn back. She walked to the door, opened it, and stepped outside into the cool night air. For the first time in months, she breathed freely. Behind her, the house was filled with silence, the same silence that once hurt her, but now felt like freedom. Months later, Tessa finally signed the divorce papers. It was over. She walked out of the courthouse feeling light and free for the first time in a long while. There were no tears, only calm. She sold the house she once shared with Liam and moved into a small apartment in the city. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was hers. The first night there, she sat by the window, sipping tea, watching the city lights, and felt something she hadn't felt in months, peace. The pain was still there, but she decided to use it for something meaningful. Instead of letting it break her, she turned it into purpose. At work, she shared her idea with her boss, Mr. Shaw, a support program for women healing from emotional betrayal and broken relationships. Mr. Shaw listened carefully, then smiled. That's a beautiful idea, Tessa. I'll help you get started. With his support, Tessa launched her project. She called it Rise Again. It started small, just a few women meeting every weekend to share their stories. But soon word spread. More people joined, and soon Tessa was invited to speak at community events about emotional healing and self-worth. Every story she heard reminded her she wasn't alone. Every tear she wiped reminded her of her own strength. She had once been broken, but now she was helping others rebuild. Meanwhile, Liam's life began to fall apart. His business deals failed, and his company lost major clients. People who once respected him turned away. The stress and guilt caught up with him. Ava stayed for a while, but when the money disappeared, so did she. One day, Tessa heard from a friend that Ava had moved to another city, leaving Liam behind. When Grace visited Tessa one evening, she brought food and laughter, as always. They sat on the couch, watching the sunset through the window. Grace smiled teasingly. Heard he's been asking about you. Trying to get you back, maybe. Tessa laughed softly. Let him. Some doors close so hard, you forget they ever opened. Grace chuckled. That's my girl. They clinked their glasses of juice together and laughed, the kind of laughter that comes from peace, not pain. Later that night, when Grace left, Tessa stood by her window again. The city lights shimmered below, and she smiled. Her journey had been painful, but it led her here, to freedom, to strength, to herself. She whispered softly, I'm not who I was. I'm better. And for the first time in a long time, she truly believed it. 1 year later, Tessa walks down the same street she once hurried through, her heart heavy with confusion and pain. The cold wind that used to sting now feels gentle. She stops outside the boutique, the one where she bought the black silk dress. In the window stands a new version of that dress, elegant, shining, untouched. She stares at it for a moment, memories flashing through her mind. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the quiet strength that followed. But instead of sadness, a small, peaceful smile forms on her lips. That dress once represented pain. Now, it reminds her of how far she's come. Her phone buzzes. It's a message from Mr. Shaw. Tessa, I'd like to offer you a partnership in the new Wellness Foundation. You've inspired so many. It's time your voice reaches more people. She reads the message twice, her eyes filling with quiet joy. As she puts her phone away, her voice plays softly in the background, steady and full of peace. Voiceover. The dress she borrowed broke me, but it also remade me. I lost 2 people and found someone better, myself. Tessa takes one last look at the boutique window, then turns and walks away. The sunlight touches her face, warm and golden. She's glowing, not because every scar has healed, but because she chose to rise, to move on, to live again. The camera lingers on her as she disappears into the busy street. Confident, peaceful, free. Hi, besties 2 hearts, thank you so much for watching till the end. If Tessa's story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories. See you in the next one. Bye. Sparkles.